Okay, so my name is Justin Ray. I'm a senior software engineer I primarily work on the PureCloud department. So I work on a team called Auth and Apps, and we do a lot of integrations. If you've heard anything about premium applications or embedding content into PureCloud, that's my primary team. I build a lot of the infrastructure for that. And then because of that work with integrations, I was brought in to be the technical owner of the integration with Altocloud into PureCloud. So everything I'm going to talk about is going to have a PureCloud flair to show how Altocloud is consumed within PureCloud, but the Altocloud bits will still hold. It'll still be applicable, and I'll get into how it's a common microservice and how it's used in the other platforms of PureCloud. Yes?
Question then. Does that mean that the APIs for Altocloud can be also used for Predictive Engagement?
Yes. Yeah. It's what's known as a common microservice. It's deployed out, so it has a public API and can be consumed and embedded in other platforms as well. So it should be applicable even if you're not a PureCloud customer or user, whatever. Okay, so we'll go through a quick agenda. This is a kind of a 101 course. I'm going to introduce you to what it is and how it works at a high level concepts. We'll go through some of the benefits and things it provides, again, PureCloud flair. And then I'll walk you through some of the configuration setup that a contact center administrator might use, and then we'll do a demo to see at the end. Okay, so Altocloud is actually a lot of things, right? So it's customer journey monitoring, first of all. So for a user's first session as they interact with your website, it will continue to follow through that. Oh, and I should mention too, you're free to take pictures, but the slides will be made available too after the talk. So Altocloud is per website visit tracking, monitoring of the journey, and it's also holistic customer journey. We'll get into how that works, but Altocloud server-side basically has the ability to monitor users across device correlation, which is a pretty powerful and compelling feature. It's also artificial intelligence. We'll see how it uses AI in the back end to make outcome score predictions based on how you configure it. It's predictive engagement, which is a big buzzword this year, but basically means proactive interactions to your users of the website. So you've seen it before where you'll get a proactive chat, would you like to offer to help the car insurance or whatever, but this is the next step level up with the AI as well. And then finally, enhanced agent, contact center, supervisor, administrator tooling. So it's a lot. So let's talk about how it does it a little bit. At the client side, it primarily works with cookies, right? Tracking cookies. It's a little bit better than, say, a web beacon or something like that, where you're doing the advertisers use, because these are first-class cookies that are embedded on your site. So there's not really an issue with ad blockers as they are, say, like a double-click provided by Google or something like that. And then it works also with the Altocloud SDK. So the SDK is going to allow you to instrument your site and then push up relevant information about it. It also links the visit to a customer and their activities. And then on the server side, as we talked, Altocloud is one of the first production common PureCloud microservices or common Genesys services. So that means that the backend and public API live in the Genesys Cloud and can be consumed by the other platforms. One of the key features that it uses is the customer identity graph. So this is stitching together bits about the user. So when a user visits the website, they'll get a cookie installed, right? But at the same time, you can also identify that user with PII information, their email address or their phone number. And then you can also stitch together other records for that customer. So if the agent, if they call in on a different phone or they use a different media type, if they call them voice versus web chat, the agent can identify those two users and eventually stitch those models together. And that's how we'll get cross-device correlation. So for this version, the MVP is web chat only, but callbacks are coming soon, and then we'll roll out the other media types with Altocloud in the future. And then I mentioned the AI. So the AI is going to be running on every customer visit. All this data that you're pumping from the client side up into Altocloud is going to be interpreted and used to make informed decisions moving forward. So it improves over time, the benefit of AI. So when all that back end comes, we come back to the front end, and that's when we get real-time event processing. That's how we know about the proactive chat offerings for predictive engagement, and that can be based on regular website instrumentation or the outcome scores. And then it's also using Genesys widgets. So if you're a PureCloud customer, you're used to a normal PureCloud chat API, but if you're a PureEngage or PureConnect customer, you probably know about Genesys widgets, and that's what Altocloud rides atop of and does the offers. So we've integrated Genesys widgets with PureCloud for the first time for this feature. Okay, so I kind of touched on some of the benefits there. We already talked about AI, right? It's the key for Altocloud. You can instrument your site with any JavaScript framework, but if you're not running it through an AI engine, I was demoing this to our new CEO, and I showed him one of the demos you're going to see, and he said, "We already knew that. I popped a chat based on a user search." He said, "Well, you knew the search term. Where's the AI?" And I said, "We'll see the AI. That's powerful." And then we've got these outcome scores, which are basically how that works. There's a lot of benefits to the end customer. I mean, the name of the conference is customer experience, right? That's the whole thing. So you can think of the tracking as kind of scary, but you could also think of it as really helping the user. So we have obviously the ability to proactive offer, but the biggest thing that Altocloud provides in my mind to the customer is context, improved context, right? So there's cross-device correlation. When you call in or when you use a web chat, the agent already knows who you are, and they can do that, and they also know, because the site's instrumented, what the customer's there to do. So they have all this improved context that will help the agent get faster results and helps the customer have a better experience. And speaking of that, the agent can work faster, right? You'll see some of the tooling that we have in here. The agent knows everywhere the customer's been on the site. They know if they've been tagged for a certain feature, which is called segments. We'll show that. And they'll know if they're close to an outcome. And those are kind of eye charts. I'm just kind of getting through to the demo. So I will go quickly through setup and configuration here. I'm not going to go too deep in it because I want to show the demo too. But if you want, come by. I have a deeper session tomorrow which will show you how to configure Altocloud soup to nuts, how to configure it with Genesys widgets, how to configure it with the Altocloud SDK, the SDK calls you can make, how you can instrument the page that deep. So it's a deeper level integration. So tomorrow at 11:30. Once you add the Predictive Engagement product, you can add that via purchase in the normal sales channel, but you can also go, there's a link at the end of the slide, you can try this for free now for 30 days. So you can actually get this and try and set it up and see how it works for you for 30 days. Once you get that, you get a whole new set of permissions for Altocloud. And if you're not a PureCloud customer, you may not be used to this level of fidelity. Maybe show of hands. Who is a user or a consumer of PureCloud? Okay. Everybody else, PureEngage, PureConnect, PureEngage Cloud. Yes. Okay. Okay. So if you're not familiar with these permissions are basically low-level access permissions, and they're for every level of operation, the so-called CRUD operations: create, read, update, delete, and you get them on all fidelities. So you get them on action maps, segments, outcomes. And we basically allow you to configure your roles to have these permissions however you see fit. So if you have a small contact center where you're a system administrator and a business administrator, you can have Altocloud master admin, right, and configure it that way. If you have more defined roles, you can configure them to have a business administrator and system administrator that configures the website, and then your agents, right, and varying levels, slice it and dice, if you will. And then once you assign these roles, if you haven't used licenses in PureCloud, sorry, Mike just kicked on. The license will be assigned to the user, and that's how the billing works. And it's a per seat based cost, and there's also a cost for the number of website visits. So that's how the billing works without PureCloud. After that, it's pretty smooth sailing. You'll grab the tracking snippet, which is made available. You put that on your website. You embed the Genesys widgets if you're not already using them, and then you get to watch live now. You can watch them on the live traffic on your website, how they're moving about. There's a little bit more configuration. Again, I'll get deeper on this, but basically your available URLs and then how you define the segments. But really, this is what I wanted to get to. It's DevCon. You guys probably want to see demos, so let the demo gods be good to us, and we'll see how this works.
Terminal, there you go.
Sorry?
You got a terminal up.
Oh, yeah.
Now we're in demo.
Actually, keep in the slideshow. Okay, so here I am in the PureCloud interface. So one thing you'll first notice is this is our admin section, which is embedded into PureCloud. But when you scroll down, you'll notice there's a whole new Altocloud section. So even though this is what we call the common microservice that's deployed with a common UI, we've embedded it in PureCloud, and the other apps will embed it in their interface so that you have a consistent experience administering the setup. So if I go to the Live Now section, we've actually got a demo application set up called Alto Universal, and this is tracking. This has all those bits, those website instrumentation configured on it, right? So it's pushing all kinds of events. Every time you navigate around a page, every time you click a button and move around, it's pumping that data up to the AI engine in Altocloud. And as I move around, you can see in PureCloud. Can you guys see that okay? Can you increase the size a little bit? Yes, I think I heard you guys. Don't be shy.
There you go.
Is that better? Yes. Okay, how about this too? See how responsive our sites are. Okay. So you can see these are users who are currently on the site, and again, this is a bunch of sample traffic, but you can see right here, unknown. This is going to be me, my Wi-Fi. You can tell all the information about the desktop, right? So I know it's an Apple. I'm on Mac here. I know the OS version. I know that I'm on Firefox for this version. And you can also watch this journey. And so as I navigate around, I'm just going to do a split screen. It'll be a little hard to see in this view, but I'll show you guys. As I navigate around, all that instrumentation is going to start moving and live updating the user's visit. Now, so this is more of an administrative view, but I want to go through and configure what we call segments, and then I'll show you how the agent view looks. So segments are kind of like tags. You can set them up to match your users. So I'm going to go in and look at this PureCloud prospect tag. And you can set up these segments, these tags on lots of different attributes, right? So you can add it on all sorts of features about the attributes of the browser, right? So the operating system they're using or the browser, right? So one of the common examples is that people on iOS devices who are shopping are more likely to spend money, more likely to check out, which is a kind of surprising factoid. So you can try and track for that and handle it especially. But what we're going to do here with this one is we're going to configure a search query like PureCloud. And so what that'll do is tag any users who search for PureCloud with this PureCloud's prospect tag. And then an Altocloud parlance, an action map is something when you can configure an action map to fire. So this PureCloud prospect action map says what happens when this segment gets assigned. So you can see that it's configured to there's a trigger on it. It's configured to set when PureCloud prospect tag is get assigned, engage using web chat. And you can configure the custom form. So it's going to be a personalized message when this user searches for PureCloud. Let's just see it happen. Okay, so I'm on the website. I happen to be interested in PureCloud. So now the backend is already associated me with PureCloud, and I can show you that on a live now here. But you can see I get a predictive engagement prompt that says, "Would you like to talk about PureCloud?" I confirm, and we'll say, I'll fill out the form. And incidentally, too, if you know who this user is, you can pre-fill out the form through Genesys widgets too, right? So if you have a site where you don't expect your users to be anonymous, you can configure that out so you can bypass that step altogether. Okay, so
that would be a chat widget that's sending data into the Altocloud, configured with the Altocloud.
So Altocloud, the SDK is used to administer all the eventing and things, and when Altocloud server side decides it's time to prompt an event, that's when it will push an event down to the client and offer the Genesys widget chat. So when the Genesys widget connects, then I'm a customer and an agent. So at this point, we've kind of left the Altocloud domain and we're into more of a traditional web chat customer agent interaction. So if I go on queue as an agent, so I'm back in PureCloud with the role, my agent hat's on now. So I'm going to answer this interaction. And you can see I have standard interaction data. This will be standard for PureCloud users. I know some details about the form that they filled out. I've got canned responses, notes, but this is the new tab, customer journey information. And these views should look a lot similar to what we just saw in the live now. So what we've done here is embedded all those Altocloud data information right to the agent, right in line with the interaction, right? And they've got all this data at their disposal to use. So you can see segments assigned, PureCloud prospect. So if I'm an agent, I can, even before I take this interaction, I can brief myself on what the customer has done, how they're here. Oh, I see they're a PureCloud prospect. Well, let me go over into canned responses and fill out the PureCloud prospect, canned response, so the agent already knows. And here's that CX. I didn't have to tell the agent anything, and they knew what I was interested in, right? And they knew who I was and what I was interested in. So again, now this didn't use any AI really, right? This was a segment assigned, and this is what I got challenged on. This isn't AI, but we're about to show that. So I'm going to go back into administration and show you the other bit. So outcomes. Let's talk a little bit about outcomes. So outcomes are expected or desirable or undesirable cases that your user can get into. And it's pretty simple to set up. In this case, remember I said that the Altocloud SDK is pushing events up to the server side. Well, any of those defined events that you set up, or page views, or facets of the browser, could also be configured to be an outcome. That's a desirable outcome. So in an e-commerce center, checkout purchase is a very desirable outcome, right? But abandoned cart's a negative outcome. So you can instrument your site to have these details. So if they add an item to their cart, that can have an event, like preparing to check out. And then when they actually click the checkout button, that's a positive outcome. What happens if they leave? They go back to the home page. They have abandoned their cart. That may be good. They may be adding in new details and new products, but they also may have abandoned it because the checkout process was too lengthy. Or the one for this insurance is the insurance quote forms mammoth, and it's hard to do, right? So over time, these outcomes will be used, and the AI will be trained based on how a user progresses through the site, and we'll be able to provide outcome scores, the likelihood that that outcome will be achieved. So here I'm configuring the outcome. So in this case, if I get a quote requested, that's the desirable outcome I want. Well, I can go over into my action maps, and I've created one called quote abandoned. So we're in this insurance model, so they want to fill out a quote, and if they don't complete the form, it's considered an abandonment. So what I'm going to do is configure the likelihood that they're going to do this. So the likelihood that I want it to say, if they're about 60% likely to achieve this outcome, that's good. And then if the delta, if I detect a change in behavior, it goes down to 30%, that's an abandon, right? And so I want you to proactively fire at that point. And this is where the AI is. So it's going to be trained on this model so that the AI can actually calculate the likelihood of these outcomes. And then that's what's used to do the predictive engagement. So let's see if this works. This is kind of tricky to demo because the website is actually, like I said, there's all this simulated traffic, and it actually alters the outcome scores over time. So sometimes it's hard for me to get it to prompt correctly. But in a real world example, it's not. Okay, so I'm going to go in to get a quote for auto insurance. Put in a zip code. Okay, and so this is the entry part. Now, so the SDK is instrumenting this website to have sent part of an event, right? They're preparing to enter the details, but oh my gosh, the user's entered. Now I got to provide all this. I don't have my VIN number. I don't know how to do this table. Let me see if I can go to split screen to show you guys how this works. I'm going to go back to the live now, and you can kind of see the outcome scores getting calculated. So this is my user right now, and I have a high likelihood that I'm going to request a quote at this point. I've gotten to the form, right? But I have to switch back and forth between these. Sorry, I don't have enough real estate here on her. If I'm on this form and I click away to, say, the home insurance, it'll drop my outcome score a little bit. But I'm still not below that threshold, right? I'm not a flight risk yet. If I go to business insurance, that should be enough. Yeah, that was enough to trigger the outcome score, and I got the proactive chat, right? So it says, "Hey, would you like a live agent to help you with the quote form?" And maybe we can look up your VIN number automatically for you or something like that, right?
And so you can do things like, for instance, if they start working, if you got a form that's this long, and if they, every time that they complete a field, your likelihood could theoretically increase.
Yes.
And then when you get to a certain point, if they get to a certain field and then they stop, then at that point you say, hey, wait a minute, they're now idle, but they filled out a bunch of this. There's a high likelihood I should now interject with a chat offer and say, hey, any questions about this form? I'd love to help you.
Yeah, and depending on how you're instrumenting it, right? If every one of those fields you're pushing metadata up to the server, you can start to collect that too, right? And so tomorrow you can see the events that you get pushed up, but you can send supplemental data with the events. So if you said a core, let's say it's a stepped form, it's core based. So finish page 1, you send the data that's there. Right now you can push all that to the agent. You can push that into a back-end system, and then the agent has access to that, and they can fill out the form for them, do the busy work for them later, right? Collect the stuff. But now it's really the AI. You can design that type of flow manually if you want with the segments, with matching it and page events and manual actions, but you can also allow the AI to learn that over time.
I was thinking, if every time you moved to another field and it was filled in, if every one of those things ended up being a piece of metadata, then theoretically that's more information is good as far as trying to find trends, right?
Yes. Yeah. So that will help. If you have fidelity of those events for each thing, that will 100% inform the AI that you're progressing towards an outcome of filling up the flow. So it's really powerful in that, it's all in the amount of instrumentation that you do on the site and the quality data you give it, right? I mean, you can get pretty far by just doing page views. If you have a single page app and you're doing your routing, at least you know what view they're moving along through, right? And so that can help you.
So as far as tracking, like for instance, if it was a timing thing of like, how long that they've been doing things, I guess as far as the sequence time of field to field, you probably have to be kind of calculating that on your own and feeding that as a piece of metadata and detect an idle situation, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah,
that's probably getting in the weeds.
Well, yeah, and I don't know. I'd have to ask the data scientists actually if temporal difference of the events actually affects the model, if you can train it on temporal aspects of it. But certainly, I mean, the benefit though is it should be a black box to you, right? And we can always improve it over time. You instrument the site, and then the AI model can get better. There's a question back here?
Yeah, you brought up spas, right? So we have a spa, we're trying to use Altocloud, and it's either doing something wrong or it just doesn't do what we expect. So when we go from page to page, like we capture the events that we landed on page, it's when we're inside the pages, we're not capturing like all the things that are happening. So it's almost like if it's a spa, like we're not getting all the things, with all the events being published. Is there like a known issue with that, or are we just doing something wrong? Or?
Are you manually, so it doesn't instrument by default, right? So you basically have to give it the fidelity events. You have to publish the events using the Altocloud SDK manually.
Okay.
Does that help? Do you know if they were actually publishing events up?
I don't know exactly what they're doing.
Okay.
So we were having troubles with that. And we were wondering if it was because it was a spa and that was causing that, or...
I do have a little bit, this is a little bit into tomorrow's, but that's fine. So this is that okay? Can you guys see that all right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so this is an example of the Altocloud SDK, so AC for Altocloud, and this is a custom event. So this is an example of the record we just saw. So it pushes a record event, a quote initiated, and there's the metadata that got pushed up to the engine, right? And that's actually the code that runs on that Alto Universal site.
So on page load, that's great, but then everything else, you have to just know, like, as they're bouncing through the page, you have to fire these things off.
Yeah, you want to pick key events, right?
No, I get it.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, yeah, I get that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a completely manual thing. You decide.
Yeah, for that. There's also a forms. They're working on a forms API that might provide a little bit. It wouldn't be so arduous to instrument it.
Something that would like show you all your possible events and let you kind of click and tag and say, okay, I'm going to do this.
Yeah, or I think maybe more like if it'll just send up the form when you publish the form, maybe just push all the fields up so you don't have to manually do it.
So it would like literally be doing everything, like mouse over on everything and hover and.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they're going to do mouse, but yeah, but you could, right?
Any events you can capture, you can certainly call the API, right?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's infinitely flexible because of that, but we can compose and give other tools in the future to make that easier.
So is the
Also,
AI? Sorry.
no, I was just saying one more thing on the spot, and then I'll take your question. You can also the page view. This is the default page view. If you just call page view, it'll use the default URL that the user's on. You can also customize the page view and give it a location and a title. So out of the box, Altocloud allows you to remove query string parameters by default. So if you have customer IDs that you don't want to track on, or that if that blows the cardinality out of the water, then you can extract the customer IDs from query params. But in spas, if you're using hash-based routing, this is how you can do it. You can just take out the wildcard bits. If your path is /customer/customer ID, you can just remove the customer ID and put a star, and now it's easier to match on your routes and items like that.
So I was going to ask that. So the AI model that's determining, how quickly someone's about to drop, is that a common model across all the customers? Is it sort of have a baseline, and then more data you put in?
It is trained for your particular use case.
Okay, so every implementation has its own training data
Yes.
and model.
Yeah, your users are your training data. So it takes a while to build the model, and then it improves over time.
Right.
But it's specific to your data. And then that's
You feed it with some data to start with, and then
you could, if you felt comfortable that you had real world use cases, you could automate it. But as I was mentioning in our demo site, you got to be careful with the outcome scores, right? Because you could feed it arbitrary test data, and then you're gonna train the model to act on your test data.
And I assume there are ways to reset the data. Like for instance, let's say you finished a UAT cycle and you're like, okay, about to go production, white.
That's a good question. Sorry, I don't know. I'll ask that.
that's a good
Okay.
question.
That is a great question.
Different.
I'm gonna leave business cards, and you can get back to me, or I'll get back to you on that one. Because there's certainly no UI view for it. I'm gonna have to ask the data scientist guys on that. But the tracking snippet, to show you that it's specific. It uses your organization ID as a uniqueness, so it's specific to your org. Yeah.
I had another question, so I'm going to my last question. So you've got some good AI stuff here to figure out outcomes and your scoring, which is great. And the intended use is, people bounce around on the screen because they're going too slow. Is it possible to take advantage of that and say, hey, I've got other interactions that are happening that are from other systems, and what I want to do is I want to actually track it. And so I just want to call the API from other spots and track things as long as they're playing it. I mean, is there any stopping you from doing that? It's sort of weird. It's like I'm taking what your intent is and twisting it, but
No, it's fine. I mean, I know that we are working on this MVP model. Like I said, is strictly web-based for your site, and it's pushing that up. But we're certainly working on other types of visits, right? So this is called a visit and uses cookie data as the visiting key. But you could do any other in the future, other media types. It should not be a
as
problem.
long as I have like a key, I guess you can answer the API, you can track whatever as long as it sounds like it's
Right. Yeah. I mean, so again, there's when you load Altocloud, you're loading with that org ID, and then you're initting with the org and some cookie-based bits. So this sets up the Altocloud SDK specifically to when you push up those events. You're not seeing it because you're just pushing up the data that's applicable to you, but it's sending a lot of the other metadata up with that, right? So it's implicitly sends a visit up with every event you're publishing up, right? So you would need an equivalent SDK for the domain you're working on, right?
Gotcha. All right.
But you would need, like, mobile is a native mobile client would be a perfect example in Objective-C or Java for Android or Kotlin or whatever. You need an equivalent SDK that would push the rest of the context up with the event.
What about, do you see this ever going to a point of, I know it's simplistic by nature in comparison to this, but I mean, somebody goes into an IDR and they've done X amount of cycles. If they went through this menu and they went backwards, and then they went to this, and then they went back, and then those kinds of things, or especially once you start getting the bots and those kinds of things, once they get into some frustration cycles and things like that, that this engine could be used to say, no more bot stuff. We need to get this person to,
Yeah, absolutely. The web chat is just the MVP. And the next one we're going to do is callback, but because, remember I mentioned that identity graph at the beginning that we're stitching so we know who you are?
Yeah.
If your website is signed in for sure and you know bits about it, if you push more context of that identified, you can get it in our, if there's a voice automated call, we can correlate the phone number with the Altocloud user, and then you get that cross-device correlation. So that's coming. I can't say any dates on that, but we want to also integrate this with our Relate offering, which is our built-in CRM offering in PureCloud, right? But you'll be able to, the idea that is that holistic customer experience, right? So when you pull up a CRM profile of a user, you should be able to see, I can show you that you should be able to see equivalent live now views for the users, but also think about them across different devices. And you can also see these views in the supervisory views as well. So you can go into PureCloud and filter by journey information, bits that have customer journey or proactive interactions. And you can also start to see conversations. That one was in progress. So this is more of a supervisory or an evaluation capability, so you can see the same controls here. So start to extrapolate this and seeing a CRM dashboard with all their visits. You can kind of get that using this drop down. The agent has that access to this view as well. You can pick previous examples. So if they've been thrashing, if they've been going back to the website, the agent has that ability as well. So every visit is uniquely tracked and then tracked across what the customer is going. Show you, here's the same agent view, where you can pick different visit IDs.
How can you see, I think this is, maybe you just said it, I just was facing it. How do you start to see the success of the marriage that hey, X percent, I'm having, I've successfully stitched together this many things today based on X number of criteria, something like that.
There are some built-in reports, and there is one that may be what you're looking for, the action map report, which I don't know how good a data this will be. Let's see, since it's all test data. Quote abandoned. That's not very good data. I'll pick the arbitrary one. So here's some data about how effective the proactive chats were. So we track, like here's a little tick where the web action was started. So you can correlate. This isn't good data, sorry, but the idea is that you can see how they progressed through the site, and then if a chat was offered, and then did the user accept it, and the effectiveness of it, and this kind of reported. I'm
thinking like that during the web session, you managed to get to the point where you collected some unique identifier that you also collected in a call that you could use as your key, and that you got this. You would expect that the system would have put those together and stitched them. How do you know? Where's something that tells me yes? Hey, here's some examples of where here's how effective I'm being at doing what you're wanting.
Oh, okay, yeah. So when you're an agent, the initial round of Altocloud actually just manually stitched them together. So you would see the SDK call to identify a customer is
we told it they were
surprisingly called.
We told it they were together, and we stitched them.
What you're associating the visit ID or the anonymous cookie with some unique identifier, phone number or something. Right. But then when you stitch manually together, well, it used to be automated, right? So if multiple calls came in and in one flow you had someone put foo at example and another put bar, they used to manually stitch. But that's not good because people share devices often. right? So in the relate CRM system that we have in PureCloud, it's a manual option. So the agent would actually, the first thing they're prompted with is the CRM profile of the user, and they can say, oh, is this John Smith? And say, no, this is Jamie. I'm using my husband's phone, and you would decline that or create a new CRM device, right?
Okay.
So we're switching from the automated system to the manual one. But then think about it like this.
But it's an intelligent manual. It's a I think this, give the human, and then the human being has to come in and.
Yeah, we found that manual works better for asserting identity, right? You can take a good guess, but if you're basing it off phone number, that's not a good unique identifier, right? And so in fact, when this identity graph, the email address, or you always have the cookie ID as a primary identifier, but it's stitched together with the email address or the phone number, right, in this graph. And you can unstitch them as well. So we're close to time, and I don't really have any more things I need to cover, but if there are more questions, we can take them.
But just in relation to some of the questions that were asked, so we have the Altocloud environment, we have events which we deliver, we get configuration, we give it some learning, it makes decisions based on patterns and emergencies in these events. So that's based at the moment on the web. There's other integrations that are going to be done. But in the example of the IVR, can you bind them together so that you can, with a generic interface where you don't have to send metadata, so that you can actually instigate events that will make Altocloud action against both web, and you can bind the customer together to their progress through an IVR or a combination of their walk-in into a store and what they purchased in the store together with what they've looked at on the website, etc., etc., etc. Can we build out to take all of those, or is it specific to web at the moment?
At the moment, it's web.
Is it intended to be?
Yes, it is 100% to be broader. So with the relate model, if your web traffic has identified a phone number in some course of filling out a web form, that could be used to correlate a voice call in the IVR in our automate software with this data. And so now, instead of just getting web visits in here, I can also have other bits. Or if it's a voice call, I needed no instrumentation on the voice. It was just the fact that they use the phone number that I know, I can pull up their holistic journey. That's 100% where we want to go. This is the MVP.
And you could then do segments, etc., based on multiple channels.
Yeah, you can go across. Yes,
You talked briefly about licensing and assigns a user, and then you mentioned something about the number of times it hits the website.
right.
Can you explain that a little bit more? Is it the number of times the user browses the website?
Yes, it's based on customer traffic. I think the rate, well, I don't know the rate, but I know it's per 100,000 visits is the unit of measure.
Okay.
Right, so I couldn't say the rate off the top of my head.
So how much data you decide to tag during that visit doesn't affect it, though.
No, it's the number of visits and then the seat cost for the users.
For the advisors.
Yeah, for the way they're billing it currently. Yes.
Just a quick question. So just to elaborate on Kevin's scenario, because some of the metadata you're going to cut through a voice call, say an IVR flow, would I be able to push events up to say I got to this menu level, I got to this menu level, and all I have in there is the fact that this person was possibly a phone number and what level they were at. Would that still show up properly in the journey, or would it be listed there?
You mean in just the IVR or integrated with a web visit as well?
Could be a web visit and then they call IVR.
So those would be different conversations in PureCloud parlance. So they would not be linked individually, but you would see it in the view of the holistic view. So you would know that
When I look in the view here, I see the whole thing.
you would see in this case, presumably, so it's not built yet, but presumably you would see more entries in these visits, and we would tell you the media type, so you could view them here.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Now, too, across this media stuff, I should also mention, too, that, these views are amazing for the agent, but if your AI is doing its job, we would rather the AI tell the user more information than have the user dig in, right? So, or the agent dig in. So, there are also plans to do what's called next best action, right? So, from there, the AI model decide what the best action is, follow on from this, right? So
if I change channels, is it considered a different visit, or would it be part of the same journey?
This one could be, it depends on how you change too, right? So if it's already a known conversation, so like PureCloud can have a web chat and elevate to screen share or something like that. That's part of the same conversation. But if there's nothing tying those two conversations, if you were on the website and then called voice in, they're not implicitly stitched in the PureCloud conversation model. It would be stitched across Altocloud, which is actually, yeah, and it's 100% why. We want the cross conversation and the cross device correlations that the agent doesn't have right now.
But how, I mean, if that happens at the Altocloud layer and presumably maybe even happens after the interaction, that's kind of too late to make any kind of decisions based off of that information, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, yeah, for that interaction, yes. But it can be informed by previous events, obviously.
So what it's more important about is not necessarily making an individual interaction successful based off of criteria about that individual. It's more making that individual interaction successful based off of trends in the of overall use.
Yes.
Isn't it feeding the information about these interactions and finding the patterns in it so you can predictively work out?
Yeah, but it's not really doing it for his interaction, it's doing it for all the interactions.
But that's his interaction is being predicted based on
Right,
previous
based on, well, not necessarily his interactions.
Not his interaction.
Yeah, but it's all indicative of like what's going to happen based on a collection of like a billion interactions. So you have a very good chance that, hey, he's probably going to have success or he's not. And then I was thinking the agent really wants to see that kind of information. If they want to drill in, they can see this. But it's really like, which direction are they heading? How happy are they? And like, oh, by the way, if they're going south, like, here's alternate actions like you were saying.
Right, yeah, so this outcome score is more valuable at a glance to the agent than digging in the journey, right? That's kind of what I'm saying about you want the AI to inform, because they'll detect trends way easier than the agent's going to detect on the call, right? So yeah, this is absolutely a valuable view for the agent.
Just one more. If the objective is to be sort of broadly scoped in the abilities, does that mean there's going to be a generic SDK where you can just generate random events from wherever you want?
That's what I was talking about.
From any interaction type.
That would be cool. That would be the bomb, because then I can take advantage of this from any interactions I want, which is because this is really
An email or
powerful. I'll be
whatever.
able to feed this with whatever I want.
Yeah, I think the trick is correlating to a visit ID, right? Like
So we can
today.
manufacture that. I can manufacture that.
Yeah, you can create your.
I mean, whatever, I can come up with whatever criteria I want, that's that. But the idea is that then I can always say, this is where you're going, right? So I can take advantage of this for, I know it's sort of twisting your intent, but it's really super powerful, and you can use it for anything, like, yeah, it works for web, but you can use it for anything you want.
It's
It'd be huge.
It's not twisting the intent at all. It's
Well,
just
that
not,
is where you want to
it's
go.
just not there yet.
Oh,
This is the MVP, right, with the web base, but it's 100% different devices, different, better integration with the PureCloud conversation model, right? So, like I said, at this point, this view is a very loose correlation with the conversation, right? It was only the fact that we launched the website and I have metadata about that website visit that I'm able to correlate with this particular visit. When we have now that it's become a common PureCloud service, now it has first-hand knowledge of the PureCloud conversation. So more data can be put onto the conversation. We'll have better feedback in the supervisory views. Today, we have the journey as a separate tab because it is largely external. You could expect to see more of the Altocloud stuff get stitched into our existing timeline of our conversation, because we'll have more knowledge of it. Expect probably the visit ID to become conversation, right? In the
And
future.
across all channels and so on and
Yes.
so forth.
Yeah. So it's not twisting it at all. It's just
And you could do it now if you're able to work out what metadata necessary in each event was. You could just do it.
Exactly, that's exactly what I'm going. But then you're like checking this, then when you change something, you're
It's short,
or whatever.
sure.
So, yeah. But exactly.
so. There's tons of resources. I should plug all those. A lot of the docs, a lot of things I covered are available on either developer.mypurecloud.com, help.mypurecloud.com, or this docs, Genesys.com. So it talks about the SDK in detail. It talks about ways to configure the URLs. It talks about the model, how to configure your cookies. It talks about GDPR. We didn't touch on GDPR, but that's handled here with consent. You can destroy the events and the tracking and the cookies if you need to. So there's a ton of resources out there for it. I have business cards here if you need to contact me directly. Thanks.